Life is a game. You can win, but there are 3 conditions. Condition number 1, you have to stay in the game. Number 2, you have to understand the rules. And for me and the work that I do, the rules are the rules of the brain. But number 3 is where I make all my money and also where most of us struggle.
Welcome to The Shift, the podcast where we explore the unlearning, relearning, and real-life moments that change everything. Today's guest is Deano Sutter, an executive mindset coach who works with top-performing leaders, founders, and CEOs to retrain the brain so they can finally enjoy the life they've worked so hard to build. Because the very mindset that pushes us to succeed can also quietly sabotage the parts of life that matter most. So what is that third condition, and how do we learn to stop surviving and start truly living? This conversation is rich, it's honest, and it might just change the way you think about control, healing, and legacy. Let's get into it.
Hey, Deano, thank you for joining us today on The Shift. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to the point to where you are now helping others?
Sure. So I'm an executive mindset coach. What I say is I help executives, top-level CEOs, and C-suite to retrain their brain so that they can enjoy the success that they've gained. Because what I find is the same programs that drove them to success are the same programs that hold them back from being able to enjoy it. And most of them are on autopilot and they don't even know they're firing. So they wonder why when they hit their goals, they feel like they're so far behind, that they continue to compare themselves to people who have more. And instead of being able to really enjoy what they do have and the people around them. And as you and I both know, money never really make you happy. I mean, they can help, don't get me wrong. They don't really make you happy. It's the people, it's the relationships that last. Nobody on their deathbed looks back and says, oh man, I wish I had another Porsche. But man, those conversations that they should have had with their children, or those moments and those vacations that they should have taken, those are the things that they really regret.
Yeah, I've heard people talk quite a bit about that, and I want to go that direction in a moment. But first, I want to hear a little bit about how you said the information, the tools, the training that got them to where they are is what holds them back moving forward. So how is it different once someone gets to that executive level?
The reality is nobody gets to the executive level without a lot of hard work. And hard work, good work ethic, working 80 hours a week can get you to a certain place, right? It can deliver. But the problem is it creates a lot of other issues like burnout, insecurities. You have the issue with imposter syndrome. So you're always chasing. And the skills and the tools you develop along the way to make you successful are always there and available to you. But the program that drives it is really the challenge and the problem, because that program usually comes from lack. It comes from insecurity. It comes from not believing in yourself or buying into old programs that happened when you were a child, happened when you were young, that continue to play in your head and tell you it's not enough, that you're not enough, that you're not going to be able to, that this is all the other shoe is going to drop, the sky is going to fall, even though if you looked historically at what they've created and what they've done, it's amazing.
Right.
Every other person from the outside in would say, you have every reason to be here and you deserve all your success and you're only going to be more successful. But in their minds, it's not so. And what's interesting is the mind doesn't silo different parts of our world. So it doesn't silo our work success versus our relationship success versus our parenting success versus our friends' success. It's all interchanged. So the same program that drives them to be successful in business by burning the candle at both ends also is driving them to drive their spouse crazy and make their kids go, feel unappreciated and passing on the same programs to their kids.
Talk about somebody pinging me. Like, you're not supposed to do that, Deano. No, you're absolutely right, though. And I completely agree. Once you get to a certain level, you're not as responsible for the things, the everyday tasks, those duties.
Yep.
But now the further up the ladder you climb, the more important it is that you can manage people and have good interpersonal relationships with people. And, you see it all the time. People who get promoted into management positions because of their wonderful performance, but they don't have the skills to lead people. A lot of times it's not innate. You have to learn how to read people, how to manage them. You can't manage everybody the same. But then you also talked about how the success is not just in one area of life. And, and I agree. I call that the whole healthy life. And then you mentioned people often regret things on their deathbed. So, buying that next Porsche might feel good in the moment, but when at the end of your life and you look back, what's more important, that Porsche or the relationship with the people who you love? Tell me how that plays out when you're coaching these executives.
It's funny because depending on the executive, it ranges, right? There's ones who are making 500,000 a year, and there's ones who are making 10 to 20 million a year. Two different places, same exact issues. And it's really about that insecurity, that imposter syndrome. It's about not being enough or not feeling like you have created enough, that you're always chasing, that continues to drive. And people think their legacy is going to be in their company, or that their legacy is going to be in the things that they leave, but all those things are not yours anymore. I was talking about this. I went through some personal challenges in the last couple months. One was a major burglary, and it ended up in about $60,000 worth of things being stolen. But things are just things. The other parts that were really hard were, the mementos. Both my parents have passed. I had things of theirs that reminded me of them, that connected me to them in a physical way. And those are gone. They're just gone. And the other day I had this epiphany. I was like, well, you know what? Those were never mine anyways. They weren't my parents. Whoever they're with now are who they're with, and they won't be theirs in 30, 50, 100 years either. So all these things that we hold on to so preciously, that we think are so important, the yachts, the mansions, the cars, the things, all of those aren't ours. They're just temporarily on loan. But the relationships we have are 100% ours. And if we invested as much energy and money and time into those relationships as we do into creating or buying these things, the legacy that we actually leave will carry on for generations and can change the trajectory, because all of us want better for our children, but all of us are passing along the same programs that held us back to our children if we're not conscious of it. And so the more we become conscious of the programs that are making us feel these negative feelings about our success, about the things we have, are the same things that we're actually passing on to our kids, unless we start to address and start to change those things. And it's so funny because I always tell people life is a game. You can win, but there are 3 conditions. Condition number 1, you have to stay in the game. You can't affect the game from the sidelines, the stands, or the couch.
Right.
Number 2, you have to understand the rules. And for me and the work that I do, the rules are the rules of the brain. Some of them are very obvious. Your brain is geared for survival over success. It will self-sabotage. It will create its own problems. It will wreck marriages and relationships in order to survive, depending on the information you're giving it. So you have to understand the rules and how your mind works. But number 3 is where I make all my money, and also where most of us struggle, which is you have to learn how to play your way. And that's hard because we're taught as we grow up that we're supposed to be perfect, that we're supposed to get it right. But the only way we learn and grow is by making mistakes, by trying, making mistakes, and then learning from them. Can't just make the mistakes. You got to learn from them and constantly iterate. And it's just like playing a video game. When you first opened up Super Mario Brothers and started playing, you didn't save the princess on day 1, right? You learned that there's a green shell, and that green shell can kill you. But the only way you find out is when it hits you and it kills you. But when that happens, you don't beat yourself up. You say, oh gosh, how do I get over this obstacle? How do I get past this challenge, right? Oh, there's a button, I can jump. Okay, great. And further down the game, you learn that if you push 2 buttons, you can actually jump onto it and you can grab it. And now you can use it to protect yourself. So this is all about, leveling up and skill stacking and tool stacking. But the only way we get them is through real life experiences. And we get them by taking our challenges, our tragedies, um, our situations where we feel like the world is falling apart, and we learn from them and we iterate and we become better stewards of this life that we're given. And it makes it fun because, again, in a game, you don't ever go, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. I can't believe I got hit by a green shell. You go, oh, okay, this is fun. What do I do? What do I do next? And that's how life should be. Life should be like a game. It should be fun, and it shouldn't be about these struggles and these challenges. It should be, how do we overcome? How do we build? How do we grow?
There is so much good stuff from just that little segment that you talked about. There's a ton we could unpack there, right? A couple of things I would like to hear a little bit more about. One of them is when you talked about how things are gifts for us,
Mhm.
right? And then you talked about, life is precious and we can, look back on it. But a lot of it is the brain and how we think about things. And one of the big issues that I've noticed with people as they become more, let's say, successful in their careers is that they do deal with imposter syndrome. How do you help people work through that?
Most people will acknowledge that everybody has imposter syndrome, but they don't really understand theirs. Because imposter syndrome comes in a bunch of different forms, and the roots of it, even though it's very similar, it's very personal. And unless you really understand the root of where it comes from, it's really hard to understand how to diffuse it. And people don't link that the same programs that affect the way that they would treat the barista when they get their name wrong or get their order wrong is the same way that they're going to treat the person who cuts them off on the highway, is the same way that, or it's from the same program, right? It has the same root cause. That also makes them upset when they see the email that says they're no longer continuing, client's no longer continuing, all those things, or that their deal just blew up. All the same responses and reactions are coming from that same exact program that's on a root level that is causing the imposter syndrome. That's causing that, I told you so. I knew this wouldn't work. I knew this was going to be a failure. I knew I wasn't going to make it. Mind you, these same people have $100 million in the bank. The deal is a $2 million, $5 million deal. They're going to be okay. But in their mind, it doesn't matter. Because in their mind, they're running that narrative, they're running that program. And here's how the mind works, and I tell people this all the time, is we have these programs from the past that served us at one point, maybe didn't serve us at one point. But all those programs that are negative are what I call viruses. Some are outdated programs, and some are malware, malicious, right? If you went through a traumatic experience when you were young that set a program in place that told you about your worth or anything else, that's malware. Some of the programs are, your mom telling you when you were 5 years old that you need to be quiet in the back seat because you're rambling on while she's having a day. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with her. But because you're a child, everything's about you. So her tone, her energy, her snap, that was about you. You did something wrong. You're bad. And so from that point forward, it starts a program of a tone. So when the teacher uses that tone, whatever your response was in that moment happens again, right? You shut down, you shrink, you get angry, you get resentful, you get mad. All these things, they build into these narratives, these programs that happen. And so as adults, what happens is we get triggered. And these triggers, and it's funny, we were talking about gifts, like your children are gifts. I also consider triggers gifts because triggers tell us two very important things. Number one, they tell us what we care about because we're not triggered if we don't care. And so if you're a dog lover and you see a dog get hit on the road, oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking, right? You're pulling over, you're trying to resuscitate it, you're putting it in the back, you're taking it to the vet, you're doing everything you possibly can. But if you didn't grow up with dogs, or you grew up in a country where dogs were wild and they got hit all the time, you don't even think about it. It does nothing for you. And it doesn't make you a bad person to not think about it because that's the way you grew up, right? But it tells us what we care about. So another example, which is a little bit more crass, let's say you're an a-hole, but you know it. And somebody calls you an a-hole. You're like, great, yeah, 100%, high five. I know I am. That's how I get all my sales. That's why people love me. But let's say you think you're kind and you are compassionate. Somebody calls you an a-hole. What happens? You're calling your mom, this person said this. Is this true? If you're friends or you have similar colleagues, you're reaching out to them saying, this person, so now you're gossiping. This person said this. Can you believe that? That's not true. You're trying to get reinforcements for who you believe you are because you really care about being kind and compassionate. And by the way, that person was just having an off day, had nothing to do with you. She made it all about you. So the beauty of triggers is when we're triggered, it's just a signal. It's not good or bad. It's like putting your hand on a hot stove. It's letting you know something's wrong. And if you perceive it like that, then you can do something about it. You can learn. You can learn what you care about. And if you know how, you can start to learn what the program is that made you have that that response and that reaction. But if you don't and you ignore it, what happens is you keep your hand on that stove and then you cause other problems, right? And you start blaming the world for your hand burning. And I can't believe people put the stove here and I can't believe people turned it on. And it creates all this other things. And all you're doing is creating suffering in your life because pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. So what we have to do when we're triggered and we have these moments, we need to start to change the narrative around what a trigger is. It's not a bad thing. It's just a signal. And what can we do with it to start to understand? And that's the same when we get triggered with imposter syndrome. Where is it coming from? What's the value that's being challenged? And what is the program that is underlying here that is keeping me from moving forward? Because if I step back and I was speaking to someone else, if I was speaking to Amy and I know everything about Amy and she's being triggered and I would go, Amy, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Look at all of the benchmarks in your life that you've accomplished, all the things like this makes sense. Of course, you're going to be super successful in this. Of course, it's scary, but man, if anybody can do it, it's you. But in our minds, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so unless we're able to step back and we're able to analyze and say, okay, what does this mean? What do we care about? What's the underlying program? And we can start to diffuse and shift and change it so we can start to move forward. So to answer your question about the imposter syndrome, I tell clients, I don't know where yours is coming from, but I do know it's real. And through the work we do, we start to unpack what that is, and they start to discover and learn. And then once you have these programs laid out in front of you, you get to choose, what do you do with them? Do you keep them? Do you change them? And it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's super satisfying. Almost every single time, I'd say 95% of the time, when I'm getting on with a client who's been working with me for a little bit of time, the first words out of their mouth, "You'd be so proud of me. You'd be so proud of me." And I'm like, I am proud of you, and you should be so proud of you because the breakthroughs and the things that are moving them forward, the fight they're choosing not to have because they're interrupting the trigger in the moment, when normally they'd escalate with their spouse and take it to the next level. And then it just compounds and compounds. And the fight is never about the fight, right? It's never about the thing. It's always about all these other things. They were able to interrupt it and instead have a conversation in the present. Because when we're triggered, we're no longer in the present, we're in the past. And so we have to bring it back to the present and show up as adult us, not child us, and be able to have that interaction. But again, with all these programs being on autopilot, until you start to bring them to light and start to be able to pull them apart and understand them and then start to reprogram them in real time so that when the autopilot's kicking on, it's the program from today, not the program from, when we were 6 years old. It's control. It's empowerment. And it helps us get past that imposter syndrome because we're like, no, that's not true. That's not me. That was me when I was 6. And man, I'm so glad I'm not 6 anymore.
I never really thought about the fact that imposter syndrome and triggers are in the same part of the brain, right?
Yep.
But you're right. They're so similar. I loved the way that you unpacked and talked about triggers. I think I talk about them not as much public. I do talk about them publicly, but what I'm about to share
Sure.
with you now is not something that I generally say in an event, let's just say, but it's going to be out on the mainstream now. But I believe triggers are your own fears and insecurities that you are out loud and verbally blaming other people for. Like when people get triggered, it's my own fears, it's my own insecurities, and I'm going to take it out on you, Deano, because you did something that I have not healed from yet, right?
I always tell people when we're triggered, we're actually moving from investigation into accusation mode. And the problem is we're accusing others, right? And most of the time when we're being triggered, we're triggering old programs from the past. And now we're leveraging that program to accuse somebody else of doing something. When we're triggered, it's never about the other person. I don't care if somebody comes up and punches you in the face. You're being triggered by that is about you, not them. Them doing that is about them. But them doing it to you is not about you. And we make it personal. We take something that's external, some external stimuli, some external thing, and we make it personal and about us. And that's when we get triggered and we start to play the old programs. And so the goal of the work that I do is always to interrupt the trigger before it triggers the old program. And so that we can install new programs so we don't have to respond the same way. The person cuts you off. In the past, you'd get enraged, you'd pull up on their bumper, you'd honk their horn because you're accusing them of thinking they're more important. You're accusing them, depending on the car they're driving, right? If it's a really fancy car, you're accusing them of being entitled. If it's a really crappy car, you're accusing them of not caring about anyone. Like whatever the program is, it's all happening, and it's happening so quickly, and it doesn't ever travel by itself. The program always has friends, right? And those friends, all these other programs all join up to create all these emotions. And so then all of a sudden we're enraged and we're screaming in the middle of our car when a second ago we were maybe singing a worship song. How does that happen? Right? It's because we're accusing them of intentionally doing something to us when in reality, they may never have saw us.
And they go about their day. They go have ice cream with their daughter at the, Baskin Robbins or whatever. And meanwhile, 2 weeks later, you're still ticked
That's
off
right.
at that person and they never thought a thing about it.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with them because, and it has everything to do with us. And here's the thing. I always say if anybody can trigger you, especially in this political climate, if you allow anybody in any position to trigger you and create these negative, because what a trigger is an external stimulus that creates negative emotional response within you. If you're allowing that, you're not in control. And so the one thing that my clients always say when we're done working together is that I finally feel in control. Might be the first time in my life where I feel in control. And it's because they're getting control over those programs and those triggers and those auto responses so that they can choose. Now, listen, they may still choose to write up on somebody's bumper. Hopefully not. But at least they're making it from a conscientious choice instead of a default program. And the accusations and stuff. Because now, like if somebody cuts me off, in the past, it would make me, now it does none of that. I always just assume they have somewhere that they really need to be and they're in a rush. They're late for an interview. I have money. I'm fine. They're trying to rush to the hospital to say their last goodbyes. I've been there. I've had that situation where, I'm rushing to the hospital to say my last goodbyes. I assume the reason why they did it isn't malicious. It's very intentional and they have a need. Now, I could be 100% wrong, but what does it do to me to believe the best in others versus feeling the worst and allowing for accusations to come up? So I don't. Yeah. And it's the same with, I mentioned the burglary. I tell people this all the time. I'm not mad at the person. I know who burglarized me. And it was definitely malicious on their end. But I also know they're mentally unstable and unwell. And they have to live in that state all the time. They're living in fear. They're living in survival. They're struggling with this stuff all the time. I'm not. And me being mad at them is giving my power and my control over my emotional state to somebody else who is never thinking about me because they're in their head and all they can do is think about themselves and how they're going to get their next meal and how they're going to do the next thing. So why would I give my power over to this person to make me feel any other way than great about my life? Listen, it's unfortunate. And there's a lot of lessons I'm learning through it. And they don't all come cheap or easy. But it's a constant effort to make sure that like I'm always in the state of forgiveness and always in a state of moving forward. And I made a TikTok. I'm not big on TikTok, but I made a TikTok about forgiveness. And I said, we're under the misguidance that forgiveness is about them. It's not, it's about us. Because right now what we do is when we don't forgive, we're taking a little bit of that poison every single day, expecting the other person to die. They don't die. They're cockroaches. They're going to live on forever. So what we have to do is we need to feed ourselves healthy protein boosts and ginger shots and good stuff in our day every single day, and not give any effort or energy towards that person. But the only way to do that is to forgive, to understand that not everybody thinks like we do. Not everybody understands the world like we do. And not everybody's going to move through the world like we do, but we're not responsible for them changing, or we're not responsible for them apologizing or wanting to change. We're responsible for us changing so that we can interact with the world from the best place and move forward so that we can help the most people, with however that looks. So that's my 2 cents on the triggers. That's why I want to jump on it, because it's about moving from from accusation into investigation, and removing us giving over that power to other people, because that's what we're doing.
And I'm so glad that you did, because, they say, you've seen the infographics where it's like, this is what I can control. It's my thoughts, my words, my actions, my reactions, my temperament. But I can't control yours. And the first time I saw that infographic, I mean, it was poof, mind blown for me, because it's so true. It's so powerful. So I've shared it a number of times with hundreds of people. But it's one of those things where you're absolutely right. I have no control over what anyone else does that does not. Even if I think I have control over people, I have none, right? No control over anybody but Amy. That's it. I can control Amy's thoughts, her words, her actions, no one else's.
That's right. And the better you become at controlling Amy, by feeding Amy the things that move her forward, by feeding Amy the things that put her in the right mindset to show up as the best version of herself, the better opportunity you have to make that impact on others so that they can rise up.
Yep.
Because I always say, rising tides raises all ships. I mean, JFK said it, but I say it as well. And it's true. Like, the higher I rise, the more I can bring people with me. But if I'm staying in the shallows, and if I'm allowing myself to get muddy and mucked up in the emotions of anger and resentment and vindictiveness and these other things, then the only place that people can come visit me is in the mud.
Yeah.
And so I want to be, on the top deck. I want to be allowing the tide to rise, and I want people to come visit me up there so that they join me up there. And the net effect of that is that everybody else gets to rise. And so there's a ripple effect. And in my, I'm doing a little shift in my business right now to make things more accessible, because most people can't afford me, because I work with top level executives. The thing about it, and the reason why I initially started working with top level executives, is because I knew the ripple effect from the top is much greater than from the bottom. But in order to really create a movement, you have to start at the bottom and move to the top, because it's not a top down, it's a bottom up. And so there's a shift I'm making right now in what I'm doing to make things a lot more accessible, so that the masses can really learn and grow and shift and change. And hopefully, and not hopefully, I mean, we know what the science is behind it. The more we affect down here, the more we can chase it up. And I'll still work with those clients, but now I'm just expanding the opportunity for everybody to rise. And it's super exciting, but also, again, the only way we can do it, the only way I can do it, is if I'm working on me on a daily basis.
Yeah. We have so many similar thoughts. I believe we talk about so many similar things, again, in different ways. But one of the things that you mentioned was how, when people get better, that raises it, right? Everyone else rises around them, the quote that you mentioned. But I like to think about the fact that why I do what I do. And, people, I've even heard people say they're so tired of talking about your why. Well, I will talk about it for the rest of my life, because I believe at the root of every single person, there is a reason why you're doing the things you do. So my personal why is to make the world a better place today than it was when I was growing up. So to make it better for my kids. And then namely, it's to make it, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. It's anything I can do at all to make this world a better place for her. So the more people I help, the better her world's going to be. And it is, it's like that ripple effect, right? The more people that you help heal and get better and be the best version of themselves, then every single one of them are going to touch other people's lives. And so my entire purpose is around that little girl, Rainey, to help make her life better. Do you have a why? Like, what is yours?
Well, I have multiple whys, but it would line. It's not with a specific person. It's more with the world because I want the world to heal, and it's very possible, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And in 2024, I made a very audacious goal to impact 1 million people's lives by 2034. So it was an audacious 10-year goal, something that I still don't even have a clue how I'm going to do that, what that is comprised of, how those elements are going to all come together. And I want it to be tangible. I don't want it to be like, oh, I sold a book and the book, 1 million people read it. Even though that can make an impact, that will be a measurement tool. But I want some way for it to really move the dial in people's lives. Because again, with the rising tide, we know that the more people get healthy and the more people get in control. Most people's bad actions are out of past programs, not out of current programs. And most people regret their bad behavior after the fact. What if we could help people interrupt it before it happens? Give them the tools and the skills so that when it's about to happen, they can choose something else. And the problem is a lot of times when we do, especially really big bad things, it's on autopilot. And we also, when we're stressed, we get very narrow focused. If you're being chased by a lion, you're not thinking about, oh, what should I do with my business tomorrow? Right? You get very narrow focused. And with that narrowing of your focus, that stress that's coming in, it only feels like there's one possibility. And so when we can interrupt the program while the stress is going on so that people can see that there's other paths, that there's other options, that there's other opportunities, then people might choose.
One of the things that I think is important to note too is that all those things do when you're not in control of your own mind and you're allowing things to trigger you and you're exhibiting these bad behaviors, all you're doing is destroying relationships, and you're just possibly destroying relationships with people who you really do care about and who you want to have that relationship with, like you said, at the end of life and you're on your deathbed looking back. And it's a shame. I have experiences. I know other people who do, people who are very close to them, blood relatives, who no longer in communication with each other because of somebody's behavior. Well, yes, if we can heal and we can get healthy, then hopefully as an individual heals, they can then also heal other relationships around them. Now, what happened with me, Deano, is as I became a healthy individual, I had to put boundaries in place around some people who I truly do love and who I truly do care about, but knowing who they are and how they treat me, or knowing how they treat other people even. I had to put some really strong boundaries around some people. So that's one of the things when you get healthy, you've got a couple of things that can happen in life. One of them is you have an opportunity to heal relationships where maybe you did some damage, but another one is understanding that there are some people who don't need to be on that front row of your life anymore.
100%. 100%. And I also, so the term boundaries is always funny to me. Because I think when you know yourself well enough, part of the program that I do is people start to understand the programs and where they're coming from. And on the flip side of the underlying program is usually your highest core value, the things that trigger you the most on the opposite side of your highest core values. If you can really identify them, and we've had values placed on us all our lives. So a lot of us have very muddled values. There's no such thing as a bad value. Everything's good, right? Values are good. But if you're not pursuing your highest core values, it can get muddy in there and you may be pursuing the wrong thing. And when you can understand that, then you can start to align your entire life around your highest core values. And I'll give you an example. My three that I discovered through doing a lot of the work was I am authentic, I am kind, and I am significant. So what I found was I would get triggered when people would not treat me like I was significant, when they and for whatever reason, and maybe they weren't doing it. It's the way I perceived it, right? Because I'm making accusations that somehow they were making me less than, or devaluing my contribution, or understating, or whatever it was. Or when they think I'm not kind, if they said that, I don't care about people, whatever, I would notice that I was getting triggered. So what happens is when you know what they are, then you get to align to it. And then by aligning to it and programming yourself every day, reminding yourself who you are, you start to draw people who appreciate that. And the other people becomes clear as day. I always tell people it's like two kids. Like when I was a little kid, I had friends, and like if our parents parked their cars next to each other, we'd unroll the back windows and we'd reach out and we'd try and hold their hand, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But as soon as they'd start driving off and they're going down two separate paths, if we tried to hold on, what happens? We'll start to create pain, and eventually something's going to break. That's what happens with people who aren't on our same journey or our same path or aren't aligned with our same values. It doesn't make them right or wrong. It makes them right or left. And it gives us freedom to allow them to go down a path that they're going on that has nothing to do with us. And we don't feel the expectation or the need to hold on. Because a lot of times what you're talking about with boundaries is us holding on to those relationships because we feel like we have to. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a friend that we've had since we were in high school or junior high that we're like, oh my gosh, but they were there. Well, they were there for you in a moment, not because of you, maybe. Maybe they were there for them. And they're not moving forward, and you are. What do? You keep trying to drag them along. You keep trying to hold on. You can't do that. So what you have to do is shift your expectation of what somebody's capable of. You don't expect a 2-year-old to hit a home run. Understand who they are. The person who burglarized me is a 2-year-old, right? I can't be mad at the 2-year-old for acting like a 2-year-old, for throwing a temper tantrum and doing all these things. Like, yes, I'm mad in the moment. I'd love to swat their bottom. But that's where the legal system comes in, right? And you take the appropriate measures that reflect on what you need to do for you, not for them. But the boundaries aren't about keeping them away. It's about you being free to pursue the path that you belong on and create space for other people to join you who want to be on that path, who will build you up, who will encourage you, and who are aligned, which makes that path so much more enjoyable. And then when these people come in, they don't pull you away from the path. They don't pull you down in the path. They don't muddy you up. You recognize what they are. You keep the expectations real for what they're capable of. And then you allow them to keep going where they're going because you're on your path and you don't have to be on theirs.
And the great thing is it frees up some space, time, and energy for you to have relationships with other people who sometimes might be further along in the journey and who can teach you, help you along your path instead of having people around you who are holding you back, right?
100%.
Yeah, that was really good. I even have a lot to think about based off of our conversation today, and I can't go wait to listen to it and share it with people. I mean, truly, Deano, thank you. That's been amazing. So as we're wrapping up, what else do you feel would be relevant based off of our discussion today for people to know, or what other information do you think would help move somebody forward who might need to move forward in this area?
So what I'd tell everybody is everybody's on the journey. You listen to me and you think I've arrived. I've never arrived. I can't arrive. The destination isn't the goal. The journey is the goal, and it's a constantly learning process. So you listen to Amy and you hear her on this podcast and you think she has it all together. She doesn't. She's in process as well. We are all on the journey. And so my advice and my encouragement is when you look up at your heroes, it could be the Tony Robbins, the Jay Shettys, the Lewis Howes, those people that you listen to that you really see, and you look at their lifestyle on Instagram and you think they have it all. Listen, that first of all didn't come cheap. Number one, they did a lot of work to get there, but number two, they're still on the journey as well. None of us have arrived. We all have circumstances that are going to be thrown in our face that are going to be mind blowing. I mean, Amy has a really great example of that, something that never even would have perceived was possible. I've had similar situations in my life where it's the same. And so never make the assumption that somebody else has arrived or has it all together, but that they're on the journey, which should encourage you that you're also on the journey. So we're all together. We're not above, we're not below, we're all on the journey. We may be at different places in our journey, but as long as we're on the journey, then we're in the right place. Because again, life is a game you can win, but only if you stay in it. So be in the game.
I love that. It reminds me of, and I like to think of it as every time you think you've reached the mountaintop, the clouds disperse and you see there's another level to go.
Yeah.
Another thing that I relate it to is like a plant, like a flower. I love flowers, but what happens with flowers? They're either growing or they're dying. So I am in complete alignment with you. Like we have to continue the journey, because once the journey stops, then we start in decline. We start
100%.
declining. We don't ever stay stagnant, ever. We're growing or we're declining. So, well, we have reached the part where we have what we call a segment. It's the Insight Wild Card. And what this is I have a list of 10 questions, and they're just random questions. I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 10, and whichever question it is will be the last question I pose to you today. So, Deano,
Okay.
what question would you like? What number?
I think I want lucky number 3.
Oh, good. Number 3. All right. Ooh, this is going to be a really good one for you. What is something that you're still learning to let go of, and what does that look like in your own journey?
Well, I'm always learning to let go of control. So I'm always working on controlling within, but I still like to control outside of that. And no matter how many times I say, I can't control others, I still try to, or control circumstances or situations. And then of course, God has a sense of humor. He brings it really, really to light that you don't. And in a way that's really freeing, because then it takes the weight off my shoulders to be responsible for anything else outside of myself. And so that's the markets, that's politics, that's people, that's behaviors. I can't control any of that. All I can do is control my response. And the only way I control my response is by doing the work on myself when I'm not in the moment, so that I'm ready in the moment to respond the way that represents me and also represents hopefully moving people forward and the legacy that I'm leaving. So I would say one of the things I'm always working on is control. And I mean, I'm somewhat of a solopreneur. I speak, I do workshops. I have an assistant, but really I haven't built out a company yet, although that is hopefully in the future, because I do like working with others and doing collaborations and other things. So within that, there is a lot of things you do try to control. And so you can't fully, so it's this balance between like, what do I control? And how do I control? And how do I let go of things that are outside of my control? So I'm constantly working on that.
Yeah. Those lessons is like the same lessons come up to us over and over and over again in different ways. So it's like an onion. You think you've gotten the lesson, you think you've learned it, but then bam, you get hit with another situation and there's another layer of the onion
100%.
every time. So, all right. Well, thank you. Like literally, I've already thought the world of you. I mean, we've had several conversations before today, and over the past few years, the more I learn about you, the more I admire and respect you and the work that you do. But literally, this was an amazing conversation, and I would love to do it again at some point in the future. But if there are people who are listening and they want to get in touch with you, What are the best 2, maybe 3 ways that they can reach out to you for help?
So I do have a website. It's in progress. It's deanosutter.com. LinkedIn is my main social media that I pay attention to. And so you can find me there at Deano Sutter. And you can also get to learn a lot more about me because I post several times a week. And usually what I'm posting is what I'm learning. And so a lot of people tend to relate to what I'm learning for themselves. And so it feels like it's a really good platform for people to learn and grow and also really get to know me.
Yeah. I love your posts too. And I do the same thing. So when I post on social media, it's either I'm speaking to my former self, my
Yep.
present self, or my future self. But sometimes people will think that the things that I post on social media is like for the world. And it's like, no, I'm writing for an audience of one, and her name is Amy Pechacek.